and everything.
It's a whole onesie. Oh, you already left.
Hello, we're live. Surprise! Kiara's wearing a onesie. I thought
it's
about
Halloween. Halloween is my favorite day. It's the only day I don't have to like put my human skin on.
Hey, how did you change my name? Damn it! I'm not very spooky today, but I'm normally a ghoul, kind of like
That's
Gary
true.
Gensler. Not quite the same as him. So I'm just in my costume from every day. I'm pretty much something that you could dress up as for Halloween. So I'm just going to go as me.
I did consider how to dress up as you for Halloween, but I don't have a bald cap. So it would have been like a pantyhose, like makeup, beard, and then just saying a bunch of misogynistic things probably, and then who might have gotten it?
Who says that? I don't say that. Anyways, okay, so today it's Halloween. We're super excited. I'm excited about Halloween, mainly because I have 3 kids that are fired up about Halloween. And my little guy is the littlest guy is in VPK. So pre-kindergarten. Anyways, and so they just sent a video of all the kids. Like it's a video of a bunch of stills of all the kids in their Halloween photos. Aww. It's amazing. So I love Halloween. I wish everybody else a happy Halloween. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of the candy, but I think just the nature of the holiday is nice because it.
You don't like candy?
I don't. Well, I do. But I don't.
You're not spooky and you hate Kit Kat bars?
No, I love candy. That's the problem, is I love candy. So I tell myself I don't love candy so that I don't eat it. Otherwise, I'll eat all of it. Like I'll be like sneaking into the kids' rooms when they're sleeping, stealing the candy and eating it. It's ridiculous. So I just don't eat candy at all anymore.
Hey, you have 3 kids. Do they still do the UNICEF boxes? No, I was talking about this the other day, and then I got this weird Instagram ad that was like the shape of a UNICEF box, but I haven't seen kids with UNICEF boxes in years. So
no, I don't know if they do that anymore. It was a big scandal for a while that like 3 cents on the dollar of UNICEF was actually going to anything that people thought it was going to, and the rest was all just bureaucracy. Right. So I think that stopped it in its tracks. The other thing is, I mean, theft is so crazy now. Like, I suspect these UNICEF boxes would just end up in the kids' piggy bank, or there would be people running around ripping UNICEF boxes off of kids. Because now apparently lawlessness is acceptable in.
I was gonna say, what is this? The Halloween from ET? Like,
so last year was my. This is a crypto show. It's a live show, Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, and we're just talking nonsense today. We are going to talk about.
We're going to talk about stablecoins for like half an hour.
We are going to talk about stablecoins, but I do have a good story. That, I mean, I've always done Halloween in Canada, and if you live in Canada, you know that Halloween blows because it's freezing and often snowy.
It's so cold.
And so, like my kids, you always have to buy your costume like 2 or 3 sizes bigger because you got to wear a full snowsuit under it and like a hat and like gloves.
This is real. Just like, obviously you were able to buy a costume. We weren't. My mom would just take spare fabric and make it into like a tube shape of whatever costume I wanted that year. So like white with black spots for a Dalmatian or something like that. So it would go over the parka, just like a tube.
That's hilarious. We actually didn't buy them. The city I grew up in had a little, like a rental place. I don't know how they stayed in business. She had like thousands of costumes, but they were like really nicely made. Like they were like thick and legitimate. And you rented them as like $50 or $100 or something. I can't remember. It was pretty cool though, because then you got your, like, it was literally any character from anything. Like you could pick anything in this place. I can still remember the smell of it. It was like musty, like weird. I don't know. Anyways, so Halloween in Miami is obviously vastly different than it is in Canada. And so last year we were in Miami for Halloween. The year before, my whole family was in Portugal. Turns out Halloween's not a big deal in Portugal at all. So my kids brought their costumes to Portugal and then didn't get to go trick-or-treating.
No way.
But we walked around Portugal with their costumes on just so that they got to do something and went and bought them candy. But so anyways, in Miami, it's insane. Like the houses give out full-size chocolate bars and like 600 milliliter pops, or soda, and like all this other shit. And it's obnoxious. There is like thousands and thousands of kids out and parents, and it's like a big thing. And a lot of the roads have no cars on them. There's police everywhere. It's really cool. it's a very different experience than what I had in Canada. Not to rub it into anybody in Canada. I mean, my kids loved it in Canada. They thought it was the greatest thing ever. So I just complained because it was cold. This is really cool because I can wear shorts and a t-shirt and take them trick or treating, and it's pretty.
And
awesome.
probably all the adult costumes are way sexier.
I don't wear a costume.
That's how
but
sexy
they are
it
way
is.
sexier because you don't have to wear as much. Yeah, exactly. You can, like, I haven't been to any Halloween parties here. Actually, that's a lie. We went to one last year. Christine won best costume.
What was she?
Like a murderous.
Okay.
What was that show where they wore those masks that had the X's on them?
Oh, I don't know, but yeah.
Anyways, it was like that, and she had like blood everywhere, and was like,
that's cool.
Not wearing much clothes, and she won $1,500 actually, which is kind of crazy.
Decent.
But yeah, to your point, in Canada, everybody gets all slutty and sexy at the bars and stuff.
Yeah, but you put a park on.
Yeah, exactly. Here, it was pretty obvious that it was Halloween. But I mean, the rest of the year, people dress like that here too. So it's not in a costume.
Well, that's your Halloween update for 2023.
Yeah, happy Halloween from Go FUD Yourself. Okay, stablecoins. So
we're going to talk mostly about stablecoins. Stablecoins. We're going to talk about stablecoins in the US. We're going to talk about stablecoins in Switzerland. We're going to talk about stablecoins on Cardano and why that's not going well. And then if we have time, we'll talk about self-custody on Shiba.
Shiba Inu.
Shiba.
All right. Again, we're a live show. Help us out. Help the reach. Like, share, subscribe, please. Do the little bell thing so that you don't miss a show. We are live Monday to Friday. So yeah, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Tune in. Help us out. Quick shout out to Chainlink. This is Christine's favorite piece of merch that I own. I'm also a big fan of long sleeve non-hoodies because I like having sleeves, but I don't like being too hot. It's perfect. So shout out to Chainlink. Thanks for the shirt. Make another one for next year. I would appreciate it. And with that, we can play our little video and get things going. Ready, set, go! All right. We are back and we're cooking with fire. Where are we starting?
All right. We're just going to talk about stablecoins. For anybody who's more crypto curious than crypto native, JD, what is a stablecoin and why does it matter?
Well, stablecoin is a bit of a broad naming convention because there's stablecoins that are backed by other assets, and then there's stablecoins that are algorithmic, and there are some that have rebasing built in, and there's some that have different types of novel structures. But for all intents and purposes, the point of a stablecoin is to create an asset that is a non-volatile asset, so that you have a way to go risk off without having to leave the space. So an example is actually right now is a great example. Well, maybe not right now, but a few months ago, everything was down in equities and crypto and most things, public markets. Interest rates are way up. And the problem with interest rates continuing to go up is it makes the relative value of a bond that you already hold reduce. So every time interest rates go up, your existing bond portfolio is worth less. It's not normal that they both happen at the same time. Often there's a risk-off scenario in macro trad markets where equities are taking a shit. So then there's a flight to relative safety in fixed income products, bonds, et cetera, money markets, not just corporate bonds, but like treasuries and all this other shit, where they're usually when the stock market is going down, they're trying to stimulate it by reducing interest rates and so on, which is making your bond portfolios go up. Right now, they can't. They can't stimulate because they're actually increasing rates and trying to take money out of supply as fast as they can to combat inflation. Okay, so essentially, in that environment, the only option then is to go to cash. Okay. And going to cash from crypto involves a whole bunch of fees, a lot of taxable events, and all of this other crap that you otherwise maybe wouldn't have to incur. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm also not a CPA. So please don't take anything I say as fact in terms of, how you're going to account for things and capital gains and this and that. Talk to your accountant, come up with a trading strategy and a tax strategy. Okay, so all of this to say, crypto has come up with, because when you're making contracts and stuff, there needs to be a base value of the contract. There needs to be something that the contract is pegged to. And so especially for, more and more sophisticated financial products, we need stable coins. We need kind of the base factor for these contracts. So the stablecoin has to be denominated in something that is consistent, something that we all believe is value. The largest stablecoins by market cap, USDT, USDC, are both fiat backed. So for every one USDC, there's a certain amount of USD that has to be custodied on the other end, so that you always have a claim to that one USD for your one USDC. Now, or USDT, same idea. Now, the way it worked for a while, and this is, if anybody has been around a while, you remember there's been a lot of FUD around Tether over time, USDT. And that's because there was, in the absence of stablecoin regulation, there really is no laws around what you must do for custody and for collateralization for these types of things. Now, there is, if you look at it from the banking and Fed perspective, there are rules around what banks can do. They can't issue fiat currencies indiscriminately. And so the regulators are making the argument that there's always been some rules that you're supposed to follow. Crypto's making the argument that the rules don't apply in this environment. And so originally USDT just was backed by a relative value, it's apparently an over collateralized valuation, but of other assets. So they held real estate, they held commercial paper, they held Chinese real estate, apparently, which was a big problem because the Chinese real estate market essentially died in the last little bit. And so that was a huge problem. And they didn't have to prove their reserves to anybody. So there's no way to validate what they were actually holding. That's all since changed. There's proof of reserves from Chainlink. We were actually one of the pilot projects at Benki for that. Shout out to Chainlink. And that really helps because that validates that the reserves, in fact, are there and they're in the right denomination. Okay, so that's fiat-backed stablecoins in a nutshell. That's kind of the easiest way to understand it. Now, there's also algorithmic stablecoins.
Okay.
And algorithmic stablecoins aren't backed often by anything. Sometimes they're partially backed, partially collateralized, but they're generally speaking not one-to-one or greater than one-to-one collateralized. Now, they're very experimental. We've never had an asset quite like this that is trying to be used as a contract currency, something that you can use in contracts that the relative value today will still make sense in 3 years from now, right? If I sold you something in Bitcoin as the pricing mechanism, who knows where Bitcoin could be in 3 years? That's a huge, huge risk. So all of these contracts that people want to price in stablecoins, algorithmic stablecoins, are a lot more capital efficient for the space. You have to collateralize less assets to do something. The challenge is, as Terra Luna and UST, as an example, which was an algorithmic stablecoin that was partially backed. They claimed that it was completely backed and all this other nonsense, but it was in fact mainly algorithmic. Another one is Ampleforth. That was an algorithmic stable that didn't do what they expected it to do over a long enough period of time. I was talking to the guys that started Ampleforth not that long ago, actually, on something completely different. But they actually believe that there still hasn't been enough time horizon for the product to actually do what it's supposed to do. It takes some time for algorithms to find their equilibrium. So anyways, all of that to say, the US government and most major regulators are really against algorithmic stablecoins.
Okay, we're gonna go into that, I promise.
No, I know. We are going to talk about it after, but they're really against it. And there's a lot of reasons, I think, for it. There's also a lot of reasons that I think we should be still pursuing this as a concept. But anyways, let's first get some regulation and then maybe we'll.
Okay, we are going to talk about regulation, but before we do, just to kind of finish up the background of stablecoins, what is a retail user using stablecoins for?
A retailer?
A retail user. What is our average crypto user using stablecoins for?
Yeah. So often it's your risk off. It's a way to keep your money technically in crypto without having to take associated risk with volatile assets. That's the idea. So the problem that we're trying to solve for is to make sure that if you use it as a risk-off scenario or a relative store of value, it gets inflated with the fiat. So when inflation happens with USD, USDC also has the same impacts. Retail users, though, so that's the first reason. One is risk off. Two is for transactions. If you're sending somebody money, we pay all of our contractors, all of our bills, all of our vendors, everybody in crypto. And so often paying bills or paying, counterparties and stuff, you don't want to send them a risk asset because that asset's going to move in value and you're going to be paying them the wrong amount immediately. And then eventually it could fluctuate dramatically over the course of 24 hours in many cases. And it's kind of a problem. So often that's what retail users will also use it for. We talk a lot about like point of sale. Do we have an article on point of sale?
No.
Okay, so we talk a lot in the space about point of sale. Like when crypto really becomes a part of like global society is when you can spend it at almost every store directly from your wallet or, via some other, where you're not having to first convert it to fiat. Because there's a lot of ways to do that already, where you can pay with like a debit card or a MasterCard, Visa. But what it does is it liquidates your assets, converts it to fiat, and then spends fiat. But once we get, proper point of sale influence of crypto assets, then that'll be, I don't think people are ever going to use XRP as, they might use Ripple as a network, but I don't think they're going to use XRP as the digital payment mechanism. I think it's going to have to be something that is more stable. Even Bitcoin is a relative store of value, but you can't use, like, Bitcoin wouldn't work currently to use Bitcoin for point of sale stuff. It fluctuates too much. It's too slow. Like it just doesn't make sense. That
one time I bought a pizza. Calm down, JD.
Yeah. For like $200 million. I mean, you can buy stuff. You definitely can buy stuff with it, but it's not optimal. And I think stablecoins, that the only meaningful option is going to be stablecoins. Go ahead.
I do also see people do things like pool and stake their stablecoins depending on the platform. So I wonder how that will impact some of our not so stable coins long term, if that will kind of run them out, or if people are still going to want those high risk options. But there is a lot to consider in terms of stable coins. And as you said, the biggest thing is that it could, in theory, replace fiat, which is why we have so many regulators mad about it. Well, we've got a couple of different things going on with regulation, but the one that's in the news right now is that Michael Barr, who has been nominated for the comptroller of currency at the Federal Reserve, says that stablecoins need to have the same type of oversight as traditional banks because they are pegged to fiat.
Yeah, they absolutely should have regulation, in my opinion, because it is kind of blurring the lines of monetary policy and private markets a little bit. I think you could, if the stablecoins got big enough, they could influence monetary policy indirectly, or problems with stablecoins could also impact the fiat currency indirectly. If there was insolvency, if they messed up collateralization somehow, if there was a bank run and they didn't have the resources or they were illiquid, there's a whole bunch of reasons. I think that potentially regulators are saying there's an outsized risk here. I think there is a risk. But anyways, regulation is likely. I just hope that the regulation isn't so overwhelming that it kills the stablecoin market in lieu of a CBDC, which would be hugely problematic. I don't think we'll see many algo stables be approved in the short term for this reason. I mean, algorithmic stablecoins, if they break, they break massively. And once you have a DPEG, look at UST, it just cascades. Now, you mentioned actually you can stake stablecoins. So another major use for stablecoins is to facilitate borrow and lend on chain. So if you want to borrow against a risk asset, you still want to maintain your exposure to the risk asset, let's say ETH. So you still want to hold some ETH, but you want to free up some of that equity to buy Shiba Inu because you think that they're whatever we're talking about later. Their security is second to none. But you actually borrow fiat first, so that your loan is a lot more manageable because you don't have two volatile assets fluctuating. So it's a pretty common thing in the space, but I think that the larger use case for people is risk off or point of sale.
Makes sense. But you can see why regulators are mad about it.
For sure. For sure.
They really believe that it'll disrupt the current financial system. Finally, glad that they're willing to come out and say it out loud at last. But one of the things that's interesting is that even within the US, there's always this power and control debate within the government. And so they aren't sure who should regulate stablecoins. Should it be the CFTC, as we've been seeing for some of our cryptos? Should it be the SEC, who's been vying for that position? Should it be the comptroller of currency or the Federal Reserve? Or like, who is going to end up doing this? They don't really know. But they do know that they all want their hands in the pie.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit of ignorance here too, on behalf of many people that are opining on this. I personally don't think, and it doesn't mean it's right, but I don't think that stablecoins in the relative short term have a big enough influence over the fiat currency that we should really be concerned yet. In my opinion, I mean, the total stablecoin market is 100 billion, maybe pushing 200 billion at peak. I don't know what it is actually right now, to be honest. We should check though, because that would be. Just give me one sec.
No.
So Tether is at 84 billion and USDC is at 24. So yeah, we're a little over 100 billion. Relative to the trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of USD in circulation. It's a rounding error. It doesn't matter yet, but I do agree that it will at some point cross that kind of tipping point where it does matter. And again, if the US has learned anything, let's not wait until something catastrophic happens to then try to argue about how to regulate it. Let's just try to figure it out without emotion. So hopefully they figure something out. But algo stables, I think it's a non-starter for the short term.
Okay, so before we move on from regulation, the other thing that's interesting here is how regulation will impact issuers of stablecoins. So like you say, right now, it's so minimal and there is no regulation. So kind of anyone can come out with a stablecoin. We're going to talk about Cardano trying to do that. Anyone can kind of just come out with it and be like, it's a stablecoin. But if there becomes adequate regulation and they're treated more like banks, they'll be required to have reserves or massive collateral to back their own stablecoin.
Absolutely. And, I mean, they claim that they have that already, the same way that Terra Luna claimed they had a certain amount of assets, the same way that Three Arrows claimed they had billions of assets liquid, same way that FTX claimed that they had billions of assets in excess of their capital requirements. Like the reason that people have a problem with this is because there's no standardization. There is no rules currently that we all can agree on. And for that reason, dumb shit happens.
I mean, that is very American, though, because the Swiss have come out with a stablecoin, and that stablecoin already has regulatory approval. It's compliant with Swiss law, and yeah, it's Swiss franc backed.
Yeah, there's a Euro stablecoin, I think, that Circle issued, Euro C, that is also fairly widely accepted in the EU. As far as I understand, I'm not sure if they've got MiCA approvals for it yet, but I think there's a really good shot. At least my understanding was they were already. We did an AMA with Circle on this, by the way. That's why I'm even talking about it. But my understanding from them when we did the AMA was that they, in fact, had consulted the regulators and lawmakers prior to MiCA just to make sure that they weren't launching something that was immediately going to be non-compliant. So yeah, I think it's great. I think it is the US has a bigger concern about this than everybody else. Having said that, all of these countries that are, blowing the horn about, all of the countries that are blowing the horn about CBDCs, I think, are the ones that we should really be looking at because they're concerned. Canada is concerned about their monetary policy. So the difference here is if you had a Canadian-backed stablecoin, even if it was $100 million, that isn't that substantial for 100 billion or 50 billion, but that is substantial in the Canadian market. Australia, same way. A lot of these smaller African countries that are all considering CBDCs, similar circumstance. This is actually a really good point, though. If you wanted to make larger transactions, Example, real estate. So the way real estate works is there's multiple weeks of escrow, and you put progress payments in and you have cash sitting there. Imagine making that purchase in Bitcoin.
Right.
Like, what type of price volatility could we possibly see over the course of 3 to 4 weeks? A lot. Like, I mean, the most drastic declines in price happen over the course of like far less than 24 hours. Shit happens, it cascades, and that's it. It's violent. So anyways, hopefully, we see more and more countries coming out and supporting stablecoins, alternatives to CBDCs. And so the US has, I think it's called the FIT Act, and a few other proposed stablecoin legislations. There's been a lot of pushback from certain lawmakers about it, certain special interest groups. Obviously, the Fed is kind of not super excited about it. But again, this is another one of those circumstances that whether you like it or not, it's here. So either we find out, or either we create a way that we can participate in the United States or not. It's not a function of, we don't like this. Okay, well, the rest of the world is doing it. So
yeah, so
either get on board, find a way to get on board, or don't. That's it.
Okay, let's wrap up with the Cardano stablecoin, because we have been talking about how stablecoins impact locations, geographic locations, and not necessarily what is going on just in the DeFi scene in terms of stablecoins. So the Cardano stablecoin is an algorithmic stablecoin pegged 1-to-1 with the US dollar and backed by ADA, which is Cardano's native token. And it came out January 2023, and people are not happy about it. It is being labeled a rug pull. Investors have lost a lot of money. And I just thought we should sort of end on this with a bit of a DYOR, critical thinking. Remember, it's not regulated yet. And also, if it is algorithmic, it might not work exactly the way you think it will immediately. But what do you think about the Cardano stablecoin and kind of the allegations that it was just a moneymaker?
Yeah. I take issue with the use of rug pull as a phrase here, because rug pull often is when you pull liquidity and there's no way that people can sell into any liquidity, and the price just collapses and everybody loses. And the only person that makes any money is the person that pulled the liquidity, because they pulled it at a certain value, dumped it before everybody could notice, and then moved on. And so algorithmic stables, again, the barrier to entry is so much lower. You don't need custody. You don't need to worry about reserves the same way. Often the algorithmic stables are started by just young, eager individuals. Not that they all are, don't get me wrong, but I've seen a few of them in the past, and they're an experiment. What it sounds like happened here, and I'd heard about this anecdotally prior to this, of course, but what it sounds like happened here is this algo stable didn't work in practice as it did in theory.
Right.
And trying to unwind that was probably too big of an undertaking. They just said, well, there's nothing else we can do. I'm not saying this to back the protocol. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying algorithmic stables, they probably realized it wasn't going to work. What do you do? If it doesn't work, you're not going to invest more in it. It kind of doesn't make sense. It really does suck though. Like algorithmic stables, I think there's a place and a time for algo stables, but I think they just need to be researched and tested in controlled environments a hell of a lot more.
As opposed to released as a 1-to-1 backed stablecoin. I feel like it's just maybe not even purposeful misinformation, but maybe a misunderstanding of what you're investing in.
Yeah, it was. There's just been a lot, I think, that has happened over the last few years with respect to algo stables, and it's tough. It's tough for regulators to look at them and be like, what? Because it's so new, it's so novel. So it is a challenge. I don't understand why people keep trying these algorithmic stables and then partially backing them by the ecosystem token. Defeats the purpose, in my opinion. Yeah. You're backing it by another highly volatile risk asset that is highly correlated. If Cardano's value goes down, then there's problems across the Cardano ecosystem. I think it's kind of ridiculous. But anyways, again, this is another example of, be careful, do your own research. This is why regulators care. This shouldn't happen. You shouldn't be putting your money in an experiment without knowing that it's completely an experiment. And if it goes wrong, your money goes to zero. That's implied, but not directly. And I think people need a little bit more consistency in how that's communicated. Anyways,
Okay.
that's it for today.
Stablecoin. Everything you need to know about stablecoins. But before we go, JD, we always forget all of the cool cryptoversaries. And today is the 15-year anniversary of Satoshi's white paper coming out.
Happy anniversary. Years. 15 years, yeah. It's been a minute.
That's wild. Okay.
All right. We're a live show Monday to Friday.
Anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Happy Halloween, everybody. Have fun.
Happy
be
stablecoin.
Safe. Happy Stablecoin Day. We're a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Like, share, subscribe. Help us get the word out. And today I say to you, Kiara, go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself.
Bye.